Oh, goes my buddy Henry the heron flying across the lake. Hey, welcome to another video. Ha! Well, I'm back from Iceland, and it's only, I don't know, 50 degrees warmer where I am now, give or take. But I wanted to do a video while things are still fresh on my mind about things I learned about Iceland while I was there. Now, I may sprinkle in a few photos here and there, but the next video I put out will have the majority of my photos in it, or at least the ones that I'm going to put out, not obviously the ones I took. Anyway, I just haven't processed them all yet. I had so many of them that I'm still going through all of them. But I wanted to talk about what I learned, and I'm going to take it from the perspective of if you're a photographer, number one, and number two, if you're a photographer who's, let's say, retirement age or close to it, because I think it does affect a little bit as to how you travel and what you do in Iceland. At least my opinion from what I've seen. Okay, let's get a couple things out of the way first. Number one, the biggest mistake I made was at the last minute I switched out my 70 to 300 lens for a 50mm prime. I did use the 50mm a couple times, mostly because I forced myself to use it because I had it, but I didn't need it. Could you take one lens and it be a 50mm and photograph all around Iceland? Yeah, but it wouldn't be ideal. What I ended up taking was a 20mm, 24 to 120, and the 50mm prime. I took my Z8 and I took a Z7 II as a backup. I never used the Z7 II. I probably could have used it for video, but I just didn't. I used the Z8 the entire time. I haven't gone back and looked at the actual statistics of it all, but I'm guessing I used the 24 to 120 90% of the time. The only place that I really did use the 20mm was at Kirkafell and Kirkafoss, and really I needed a 15mm, 16mm lens. If I had had the Nikon 14 to 30, which I don't own, but if I owned that, that would have been the lens I would have used for Kirkafell, Kirkafoss, and maybe one or two other places. But for the most part, 24mm is wide enough for me, for what I was photographing, which was mostly landscapes. But there were definitely times that I wish I had more of a reach than 120mm. I wish I had had that 70 to 300. I didn't think I would, but I did. I did miss it at times. The biggest thing that surprised me was that you have to get yourself mentally ready for the fact that you're going to see some incredible sights that you just can't take photographs of. And it's extremely frustrating, and that was the most surprising and frustrating part for me going there as a photographer. And the reason why you can't is because almost all the roads are single lane and they're very narrow. And despite Iceland being a somewhat of a tourist destination now, in my opinion, they're still not really set up to be a tourist destination. They just don't have the facilities to do it on a mass scale where maybe some of our U.S. national parks, or maybe even in England. I don't know. I've never tried to photograph the national parks in England. But I would think in other parts of the world, they're a little bit more set up for it than Iceland is. There are tourist destinations, and they do have places where they've set up little gravel areas where you can walk, and they have a grate over top of them. Yeah, I see you. So they are trying, but you'll drive down all these roads and you can't pull over. There's just no place to pull over to take the photograph. Hush, I see you. Anyway, so what I would have to do sometimes was drive down the road half a mile, find a place where I could pull over, and maybe walk back to the location if I thought it was important enough. So there's going to be a lot of those times where you just can't pull over. That's very frustrating. The other thing which I tried to research before I went, I really didn't find much information on it. So be prepared. Sometimes you can be in areas where bathroom facilities are far and few between. And I know I've seen people that live in Iceland that put out these videos and they say, oh, you just go into a convenience store. Well, that may or may not be true. We went into one convenience store where I filled up the tank with gas. We had breakfast. We sat there and they wouldn't let us use the bathroom. They said, no, it's not for the public at all. And we had just spent over, I don't know, $100, $150 between the gas and breakfast and everything. And they said, well, you have to go to the public facility, which is down the corner. And they gave us a map. And this was about 9:30 in the morning. We went to the public facility and it was still locked. And we had to go. So we ended up having to drive to another convenience store, which was 45 minutes away. And of course you had to buy something. We weren't really hungry, but I ended up buying a hot dog and I think something to drink, just so that we could use the facilities. And that was on the western side of Iceland, up around the Snaefellsnes Peninsula. They do have one rest area, if you can call it that. Well, it's a welcome center. And it's way out at the tip of the peninsula. There's a lighthouse out there, and they do have free facilities. And that's the other thing, the convenience stores, a lot of times they charge you. And the two rest areas that we did find, they charge you. The other point I'd like to make is, if you're a photographer, and even if you're not, even if you just like beautiful scenery, no matter what I say in this video, which you think might be negative, it's not necessarily negative. I'm just trying to point out things that I really wasn't aware of before I went, even though I tried to do a lot of research. And that is, you should go. It's an amazing country. I mean, it's amazing. Everywhere you turn is a picture postcard. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a picture postcard. And that, in a way, is frustrating because you want to stop and take all these photos and you can't. And it's so frustrating. So you just have to realize you get what you get and you move on. We were fortunate with the weather in that it rained a couple days here and there. We had one bad stormy day where it snowed, it rained, sleet. It ranged anywhere from the mid-20s Fahrenheit to lower 30s with wind gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour. And unfortunately, that was the morning I was going to go and photograph the Glacier Lagoon and Diamond Beach at sunrise, and also probably go out to Stockness, but the weather was just was horrible. So we ended up going back to Vik rather than going further east. So the weather will play a part in where you end up. Now I had pre-planned where we would be on each day. And the one thing that I would do differently is, even though the Snaefellsnes Peninsula is beautiful, and I would go back there, the south coast and more towards the east is where you're really going to see the beautiful parts of the country. There are parts of the Snaefellsnes Peninsula that is beautiful. Again, it's worth seeing. I don't regret being there, but I wish I had one extra day in the South. It's a lot of driving. I got tired. I averaged, because sometimes my wife sat in the car a little bit, but I averaged somewhere between 6 and 7 miles a day of walking, mostly with my backpack on. And it was pretty heavy because I had 2 camera bodies, 3 lenses, and batteries, which brings me to another point, which I know I heard, and it is true. Your batteries will deteriorate in the cold a lot faster. I went through 2 batteries a day. I had 3 with me that were always charged first thing in the morning or at night, but I went through 2 a day. I took 2 120 gig cards with me, memory cards, and I took, I think, 4 64 cards with me. I filled up, or mostly filled up. What I did was, as I went from each location, I changed cards, so that if something happened to the card, I wouldn't be losing everything. I would just lose one location. Fortunately, all my cards held up, which is to be expected. They don't fail that often. Well, this one blackbird just must have a nest nearby. He's after me. But like in the Snaefellness, I filled up maybe half of the 120 card, and I switched it. Every couple of days I'd switch out the 64 meg cards. 64 gigabytes, whatever. I'd switch those out. And that's the way I planned that. Again, I had made reservations in all the hotels, which is good and bad. You almost have to make the reservations, especially when you get into the time of the year that I went, which was the 3rd week of May, 2nd, 3rd week of May. Unfortunately, we flew on Delta, and we had a mechanical problem coming out of West Palm the very first day, and we didn't get out until the following day. Thank you, Delta, because they refused to. We could have got out on a later flight from JFK to Reykjavik, but Delta wouldn't get us on a plane up to JFK instead of the route we were supposed to take, which was to Detroit and then to Reykjavik, which is a whole nother story. So I was not particularly pleased with Delta. They did eventually get us there, but about 26 hours later, which means we lost one night in the hotel, which we had already paid for. And it also meant that the first day when we landed, I had to drive 3.5 hours, whatever it was, from Keflavik Airport all the way up to the Snaefellness Peninsula after being up for an entire day of traveling. So that wasn't fun. But once we got there, it was worth it. The temperature was mostly in the mid-30s to mid-40s. I think one day it almost touched 50 Fahrenheit. I was not cold. My wife said she was a little cold. What I did was, on Amazon, I bought a couple of pair of long underwear that were some sort of wool, but they stuck to your body. And that really paid off. It kept the warmth up against my body. So I wore that. Then I wore a long sleeve shirt. Then I wore a windbreaker type pullover. And then I wore a little heavier jacket. I had gloves. I had a wool hat. I had water resistant pants. I had wool socks, and I had boots. And I don't think I was ever cold. At least not for a long period of time. The coldest I felt was when we first arrived at the airport. We had to take a shuttle to our pick up our rental car, which I want to give a shout out to. The company we used was Blue Rental. They're a local company. We didn't use a Hertz or an Avis or anything. We used Blue, which are right there. They were excellent. I would highly, highly recommend them. They were excellent. What you do is you pay for your car the day before you arrive or several hours before you arrive. We got it, I think, 24 hours before we arrived. They send you a code and they send you a box number. And so you walk into this room and they have all these almost little security boxes in the room. There's, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 of them. They send in the email, they give you the number of your box and then they give you the code. And you go to the box, put the code in, and the key pops out, and it has a little number on the key, and it tells you where your car is. And the cars are parked right behind the little building there. They tell you the aisle number and the spot that your car is in. And it was very easy. And even when we delivered it, you pull up in front of the place, you walk in, you hand them your keys, you say thank you, and off you go. It took no time to get the keys, and even dropping it off was less than 5 minutes. Highly recommend it. I did pay for all the insurances, because even if you just drive the main roads, like they have the one main road that goes all around the country, which they call one. Stuff does kick up, and if you get, and there's a lot of gravel roads you're going to want to go down, and you have to check your license with your car, with your rental car. Now, we got a 4-wheel drive. We paid the little extra. I didn't go across any rivers or creeks or anything like that. I didn't go crazy, but we did go up some gravel roads, and it will kick up. And if you get scratches and things like that in the paint, they're going to want to charge you unless you have the insurance. So I paid the insurance, and I haven't heard from them. I think I got one little tiny scratch, but I haven't heard from them, and off we went. The other thing to be aware of, most places that you go, well, I can't say most, but a lot of places that you go, they charge you for parking, especially the big places. If you go to Skogafoss and some of the big waterfalls, they charge you, Kirkefoss, they charge you for parking. And there's no attendant, there's no anything like that. There's a little app you have to get on your phone, or there's a little box that you put in the number with your credit card, or you even just hit your credit card. Now, we had a problem with that at Kirkefell, where it didn't take our credit card, and I thought I'd get a bill from them because I didn't pay for parking. So far I haven't gotten anything from them, and the rental car said they didn't get anything on their account. So I don't know whether they're going to ding us or not, but a lot of places like that you do have to pay for parking, and it turns out to be anywhere from $5 to $10 maybe in US dollars. There is no language barrier. Everyone in Iceland speaks English. We did have I ran into one place where they kind of pretended like they didn't really speak English, but once they got going with them, they spoke perfect English. And for the most part, the people there are very nice. He said the only place we had trouble with was the first place we got gas, which was in that little town just north of Kirkefell. I know I'll mispronounce it, but it's Grundafurder or something. That's where we paid for the gas and had breakfast, and they wouldn't let us use the bathroom. And she was, can't say she was rude, but she wasn't particularly pleasant either. Let's just say that. But most other places, they're very nice. They try to help you out. All the hotels, all the people in the hotels are very nice, very hospitable. They all speak perfect English. The few, I think we went to maybe 2 help centers, maybe 3. They were all very nice, all informative. They all try to help you. So that's not a problem. So you can go there. And the other thing was, you don't need to get any money. Never, not one time did I need to have Kronos. You can use a credit card for everything. Doesn't matter where you go. Said even parking, you just use your credit card. Food's expensive, like they say. I mean, it's very expensive. There are a few ways around it. For the most part, we stayed in hotels that offered breakfast. So I'd fill up, have a nice breakfast, and then maybe stop and get a hot dog somewheres midday. The hot dogs aren't that expensive. They're actually priced pretty much the way they would be in the US. So I'd have a hot dog, and then we'd have dinner either in the hotel or somewhere near the hotel. One night the night that it was raining really bad, we just stayed in and had some food that we had brought with us. But be prepared. Food's expensive. Gas is expensive. There was one place where the pump didn't take our credit card. So I had to go inside to the convenience store and get a prepaid card, which I never did end up using all the way because I tried using it at a couple of different gas stations and they didn't take it. Which the lady told me that they would, but they didn't. So I wasted a little bit with that prepaid card, but it was just something I had to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, we were probably an hour away from the next gas station and I was under a half a tank, maybe a quarter tank, and they always tell you don't go under a half a tank. So I had to do the prepaid card. I did it and it worked. So even though I had contacted my credit card company, told them I was going, told them I needed a PIN number, they said no, you don't. There were a couple times that yeah, you needed a PIN number or it wasn't going to work. And we tried a debit card, we tried a different credit card, and there was that one gas station where it just wasn't going to take any credit card that I had, and the one or two places to park they just weren't taking the credit cards that I had. But other than that, you don't need the money. You don't need Icelandic money. Anyway, the next video I'm going to post a lot of photos. Like I said, I'm still kind of going through them. It's an amazing place. I was stunned at how beautiful it was. I was expecting it to be beautiful. It was beyond expectations. So if you have any desire to go there, go there. I can't say it enough. It was, especially for a photographer, it's an absolutely amazing sight. But be prepared for every time you get a shot, there's going to be 100 of them that you're going to drive by and say, why can't I stop and take that photo? And mentally, you have to be prepared for that. I wasn't. The first morning we were there, I'm like, I gotta stop. I gotta stop. I gotta stop. I gotta stop. No, can't stop. We saw this waterfall along the side of the road. First waterfall I had seen since we had gotten there. And I wanted to stop. Nope. Single lane. Oh, and the other thing is the single lanes. The roads are built up. They sit up off the ground. Maybe anywhere from 2 feet, some places as high as maybe even 5 or 6 feet. They sit up off the ground. And the other thing, in the southern part of Iceland, when you go from Vik out to the glacier lagoon, they say you go through a lava field. You go through about 40 miles of a lava field, and that's all you see. It's beautiful, but that's all you're going to see. So anyway, in the next video I'll pop up a lot more photos and maybe have a little bit more conversation about it. Just know that you should go. Just go. If you're a photographer and you can afford it, to me that's the one location on earth that I'd be hard pressed to pass on. Would I go back? Yeah. But knowing that at least the way I did it, which was get my own rental car and drive around with my wife, the advantages were I could stay a place as long as I wanted, Disadvantages were I had to do all the driving, and by the time I got home, I was exhausted. I mean, I just didn't do much for 2 days. Been home, this is my, I think, 4th day home, and I'm just now starting to feel human. I was exhausted. So get yourself, if you are going to go, know that there are some places that you can just park your car and walk up to, some of the iconic places. You don't have to walk that far. But there are places, if you want some images that aren't, you know, the same as what everybody takes when you go there, you got to walk a little bit. You just do. So be prepared for that too. It can be a little challenging. The only place where we kind of went up more of an incline was the canyon down in the southern part of Iceland. That was a little bit of a challenge to get up that hill. We went all the way up there. The views are spectacular. It was worth it. But it took us a little time to get up there. And also there's 1 or 2 glacier sites which is the other thing. You can walk right up. There's a couple of them. You can essentially just either, we didn't walk on the glaciers just because you're not supposed to without a guide. So don't come arrest me because we didn't do it. But there are places where if you wanted to, you can walk right up and stand on a glacier. I mean, it's that accessible. I'm surprised. The reason why I say go is because I have a feeling they're going to stop all that. You know how people are, they're going to ruin things. But it's a beautiful location and highly recommend it, especially for a photographer. Oh, and one last thing, if you're going to go, don't go to Reykjavik and then just sit there and do bus tours. You got to get outside of Reykjavik. The real images are a couple hours outside of Reykjavik. Now you can do the Golden Circle and do those kind of things if you're a little bit older and you don't want to drive, and that's the best you can do. I'd say it's still worth going, but to really see it, you have to get a couple hours out of Reykjavik. All right, that's about it. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Till next time when I post my photos, take good care, and I'll get it out as quickly as I can process these photos and get them up. Take care. See ya.